Today's objective is refactoring. I've got this top-down game here. Let me play it and show y'all what I got. So my character moves with WASD. I can connect controller and use a little bit of controller, but I've been working on the UI as well, and temporarily I've just sort of discontinued controller support because the UI is complicated. Makes things simple for now. The player isn't. This pawn is not currently looking at where my mouse is, and that circle actually represents where the player controller is at. So if I enable mouse look, it'll start looking at where the player controller is, and the player controller I'm using it as like a targeting object basically. If I let go of it though, the pawn starts just looking in the direction that it's walking in. Yeah. Another thing I've got is I have this cool camera controller. So if I look in a direction and hold F, well, I think I'm on the wrong camera mode actually. I'm on selected object. You put it on follow player. So the camera has multiple modes. In the follow player mode, you can zoom in and zoom out, and you could change the local X rotation. But another thing you can do is if you hold F, you could turn in the direction you're looking, and it turns in the nearest cardinal direction. So if I'm looking this way, it'll do this global, like northeastern sort of look. Although I think this is southeast, I believe. If I'm looking that way, it does that. If I double tap F, it does a quick turn. So that's cool. Also, I could press C to crouch, and if I press Shift, I start sprinting. Let go of Shift, stop sprinting. So let me show you the code now. Here we go. So this is the humanoid pawn, and this is the player controller. Let me open up their parent classes. Alright, so yeah, this is one of the problems that I want to fix with this refactor. So humanoid pawn is just a mono behavior. There's no parent of humanoid pawn, which will make it really difficult if I want to have like vehicles, or if I want to have like monsters, like 8-legged monsters. Obviously those aren't humanoid. So what do? I'm going to need to make a parent pawn class for this. Because right now every controller is tightly coupled to the humanoid pawn class. There's nothing I can do about that. If I wanted to make, if I wanted to make, for say, like a spider enemy, I just wouldn't be able to do it without a refactor, that is. So the parent controller class, all it has is this possess pawn functionality. The pawn is really, really bad. This is the thing that needs the bulk of the refactoring. We've got there's a lot of bullshit that shouldn't really be here. Obviously all of these movement things are not supposed to be in the pawn. They're supposed to be in a separate movement script, which I do have. It's called humanoid movement, and I'm going to want this to inherit from movement. So I'm going to need to make a base movement class that the humanoid movement can inherit from. But yeah, there's nothing actually really in here of value. All of the actual movement stuff is happening in here. And the pawn doesn't even have a humanoid movement component on it. So, yeah. We've just got a bunch of... I think explaining all of this would take possibly too long. I mean, we just have a whole bunch of state that's being checked. So we have where the look target should be. We have if you're crouched or not, whether you should be looking at the target or not. We've got whether you're sprinting or not. This is all very unorganized. So let's see. Right now, the goal is going to be, I want to uncouple the controller from the humanoid pawn by making a base pawn class. So this is going to take quite a bit of work, but when I'm back, hopefully the goal will be controller will no longer be coupled to the humanoid pawn. The humanoid pawn will no longer contain the logic for moving, and everything will be hunky-dory. So I will be back with it when I'm done refactoring. I'm back from refactoring now. Before, my controllers had a humanoid pawn. Now they have a normal pawn. And that has some interesting effects. So what I've realized and I've decided to do is extract a whole bunch of the monolithic pawn class, monolithic humanoid pawn class into the pawn class. So right now this is all the humanoid pawn adds on top of pawn, and these three, well, these are actually just two variables, are all that it actually adds, because since I'm using root motion to move my characters around, their pawns are tightly coupled to the animation control that they use. Because obviously if you have a spider skeletal mesh, it will have different animations that it has to play. It will take maybe a little bit of different parameters, possibly. However, I'm still able to extract a lot of the logic into a base pawn, because every single animation controller should probably be able to move in like an X and a Z axis, because Unity is a Y up. So inside of my pawn is all of the logic for moving and turning. I want every pawn to be able to move and to turn. So I've got this input movement and this look target. I've also created my own object called a targeter, which will basically handle, it's just a game object, empty, that moves to a target and follows it. That's all it does. If you want it to not follow it, you could set follow to false, and then you can manually move it around. And this targeter, the pawn uses just to look at things. Doesn't use it for moving around, just uses it for looking at things. So this way, if I want the AI to move in one direction but look a different direction, I can use this look target very easily. It sort of separates those out into two different things: the input movement and the look target. I set the look target to maybe my player and have it start shooting bullets, and then I set the input movement somewhere else so it's maybe running towards cover while it's shooting at the player. That could be cool, because if I play it right now, I'm not setting the look target to anything. It's just gonna walk over here looking forward. But if I were to set the look target to my player and tell it to look at the target, it would look at me and follow me around. I haven't set this up yet, but the logic is there. That's what refactoring is about. Makes things easier later on. So what else do I got? Just almost all of the logic inside of my humanoid pawn is now inside my pawn. So I have my coroutines. This is the acceleration coroutine. Now I don't want you to be able to instantly ramp up to max speed. All this is doing is it's taking that input movement and your current movement, and it's slowly ramping up your current movement towards that input movement so that it's not snappy. Now it doesn't even really do what I want, because if I spam press this, it still looks all jank. I might need to go back and refactor, figure out why that's happening. I don't exactly know if that's a problem with my code, or if I don't know if it's a problem with my code or if it's a problem with the programming. It's possible that it's just a problem with the system I developed, because I didn't test that before. It just sort of looked smooth. I don't know. But one very, very important function that all pawns have is this update animator function. So since the pawns have the base pawn always has a movement like input variable, it's setting the input movement, well, it's clamping it first. But this other thing that we have right here, I'll explain what this does after. But we got that input movement, and then we just give it to our animation controller. Animation controller's component. This should have a required component for animation controller. I'll put that right now. Required component type of, say, what was it? Animator. There we go. So this update animator function just gives values to the animator. Every single animator that I will have a right, well, every single like character animation controller I'm going to have is going to have a right parameter and a forward parameter, being the X and Y movement vector data. So this way, if I go to a humanoid pawn and I go to this override that I have, the only thing it's adding on to, so first it does the base update animator, and then it adds on to it the stuff that a humanoid pawn's animation controller would be able to do, such as crouch and sprint. So in a sense, we can sort of build on top of this. There might be an even better way to format these, but I like this a lot that I have. I have these input functions. This was previously the run function. It's what the controllers told the pawn to do to set the input movement vector. And then obviously if the input movement vector changes, we need to start that coroutine. So that's why we have this in a function. Yes, and then I have all my mono behavior callback. Oopsies. I have all my mono behavior callbacks right here. Got my update. It's gonna look at the so all this this is just a copy and paste, well, cut and paste from my old humanoid pawn. So now the pawn will always look at the look target, or it will start looking at the last move direction if you're not looking at the target. This is a bit complicated, but yes. This specific code right here, if I recall, it's just so if the look target is too close to the pawn's transform, it can like snap out and glitch really far and glitch around. So this is just there so if it's looking at something, it doesn't have to. It doesn't do that snappy, glitchy look. But look target is false by default. So unless you enable that to true, this isn't gonna happen. Yes, I have this helper function called slurp y rotation. I don't know where it is. Oh, here it is. Yeah, and I have an overload for it right here. Oh no, the overload is down here. All this does is it just rotates. It just spherically interpolates the rotation towards a look direction over time. Not over time, just in that current frame, because I want to slurp it towards the look direction, or I want to slurp towards the last move direction. And then every update inside the base pawn, it'll update the animator. So inside my humanoid pawn, I have well, the humanoid pawn doesn't even override the base pawn because it doesn't add anything on top of update. But inside of awake, all it does is get component. I've got my shorthand getters. These again, these are just to help with some readability. Somewhere I have business logic that uses this current speed and input speed, probably somewhere in the update animator, maybe. Maybe this, yeah. Current movement doesn't equal input movement. If I didn't do it with the getters, it would look disgusting. It would look like, well, I guess it wouldn't look that disgusting. Whatever, but these just help make it look more prettier, I guess. Got these coroutine variables. Basically everything inside of here is just things that I could extract from the humanoid pawn into a base pawn. So now humanoid pawn inherits from base pawn. Still has all of these things. And something interesting though I'd like to point out, inside of my controller, now that it's a pawn, I have to do some typecasting. I only ever have to do it though when I'm actually interfacing it, interfacing with the pawn in a way that requires it to be a humanoid pawn. So one of the things that a humanoid can do is crouch. So I just say possess pawn as humanoid pawn, toggle crouch. It's that simple. And I don't have to do any null checks, because if this is even being invoked at all, it's certain that we have a humanoid pawn, because, or something that can crouch at least, you know. The same thing is true for sprint. Here we go. Yeah, typecast it right here, because the only two things a humanoid pawn does that a normal pawn doesn't do is it sprints and it crouches. That's all it does extra. And that's pretty nice. I also had to update a little bit of logic in the AI controller, but now this is pretty nice. Look at how tiny this humanoid pawn is. This is still a little bit monolithic, but as much as we can reduce that, I have, and everything works. So if I play this, I've already shown it'll work again, just like it did before. I can tell it to enable look rotation by pressing the right mouse button, because that invokes the aim event, and then that tells the targeting object that I have to begin following this, and the player and the pawn starts to rotate to look at it. And when I don't do that, it defaults to looking in the direction that I'm moving in, or looking in the last direction that I moved in. Yes, there it is. That's everything. Thank you for watching.